to our very first webinar. It's the first of our series, and I'd like to start by introducing Anton Schumacher. He's our CEO, and he's an identity coach. And Anton fell in love with coaching because he wanted to be able to help people with their identities. And as a fellow human being, it's really his life mission to be able to help 10 plus million people. And so that's impressive. And so he really wants to help people to be able to realize their full potential. And he knows that one of the things that he wants to share with us, especially today, is that when we have stress in our lives and we don't manage it well, it can cause a lot of things to happen to us. And his father, unfortunately, passed away due to cancer, but it wasn't the cancer that ultimately took his life. We feel that it was the stress of being there for everybody and not putting in time for himself. And so with that was one of the reasons why we're putting on today to kick off our session. And a bit about me. I'm Linda Tilson, and I am the Chief Operating Officer of Coaching Hub. And so I do a lot of the behind the scenes work, and I also share in Anton's passion for helping people. And I really believe as a confidence coach that when people feel valued and cared about, then they're able to bring everything to the table and be and do more. And so again, Coaching Hub is offering this series as a way to really impart the actions that you would take when you're trying to manage your stress, you're trying to understand the physiology behind what causes stress. We're going to be teaching some ways that you can use sleep to be helpful for you rather than something you just do to stay alive. And so today I'm going to serve as a facilitator. And so we want you to know that for this program, Anton is going to be having a discussion with us. And then at the end, we are going to open it up for questions. And we have a Q&A dialogue box. And so in there, we'd like you to type your questions. And from there, I will go ahead and take the first one that's there, and we'll go ahead and answer those for you. And that's what I have for right now. And so Anton, take it away.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Let me adjust this video format. For some reason, it's not popping me in there. Linda, you can't see me, right?
I can see you in the corner. Yes, I can.
You can see me? Okay, perfect. All right. So I'll get going then. Let me just make sure the screen is right. Sorry, one sec. I just want to make sure the recording happens properly for all the folks that are not able to attend. For some reason, it's showing you instead of me, but let me.
I can hit record from my end if you would like me to.
There we go. All right. Okay, guys. So I'm Anton. Linda, thanks so much for an awesome introduction. You know, Linda's my lifesaver a lot of times. She's my attention to detail. Keeps me grounded, keeps me on track and organized. So without further ado, let's get into the presentation. You know, what we're looking at, agenda for today. I'm not going to get too heavy with it in the beginning. This is going to be a 3-part series where I'm going to really educate you on stress. This is going to be a lot of education on where is stress impacting your life? What are different types of stress? Where is it coming from? So there'll be 3 weekly seminars or webinars, I should say, that will give you that information. Then the 4th one will be a small fee for that. And I'm going to dive in much greater detail on some corrective actions on top of the ones that I've provided for free. So for our agenda for today, what we have, I'll discuss a little bit about myself, give you a little bit of my background on top of what Linda covered. We'll talk about who this material is for. We'll discuss where stress impacts your health. We'll talk about origins of stress. We'll discuss the modern disease model. We'll discuss addressing the root cause in medicine. We'll talk about normal daily stress pattern, what it looks like and how it should be versus where we are right now. And then I'll give you guys as a farewell present, I'll talk about sleep hygiene and best practices to make sure that your sleep is optimized. So this is a little bit about myself. It's a slide I like to use, you know, whenever I give presentations or keynotes or whatever it may be. And this is just a little bit about myself. You know, born and raised in Ukraine, son of a communist mayor, as Linda was telling you. My father is my hero. He's the reason why I'm on this journey. Had my father taken a little bit more for himself and took care of his stress, he could have continued to be this amazing guy that he was and keep changing lives. I just tell people the reason he impacted me so much is I remember his funeral. When my father passed away, the casket had to be driven at a walking pace because there was 3 miles of people walking behind him to pay his respects because of how amazing he was. But still, he died when he was 45 years old. Had he took care of himself better, had he been better for himself, he would have been able to give a lot more to other people. He would have been able to continue to be this amazing guy for so long. So military, this is where I really learned to manage stress, high pressure stress situation, combat missions, and was deployed to Iraq and was a leader in that role. So responsible not just for my own stress, but also for, other lives. Then I became a father and everything changed. And where I became educated through stress is in health and fitness world. I've been coaching for 10 years, over 300 different clients, anything from nutrition to fitness to stress management, hormone changes, but really take the inside out approach. When we're good on the inside, outside becomes a piece of cake. Whether you want to lose weight, have better energy, better focus, better decision making, you name it, it all starts on the inside. How you treat your body on the inside will matter. And guys, I say this to everybody, your body is the most amazing piece of machinery in the world. It is so unique, so special, and it does so many wonderful things. But in order for it to perform that way, you have to treat it that way. So think about this. If you go buy a Ferrari, are you going to go and put cheap gasoline, not do maintenance changes and oil changes on that Ferrari? Absolutely not. You're going to treat it like a baby. You're going to treat so perfectly. But then we don't do that to our body. Think about that. Why is that? We'll talk about that in a little bit. So Linda talked about my mission to help 10 million people to realize their potential by impacting their mind. So that's a little bit about myself. So who is this for? The slide on the picture on the left kind of explains why people usually join this seminar. If you guys don't know what WTF stands for, reach out. I'll explain it. It's just a little American joke. But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a salesperson, right? If you got multiple incomes, if you're a commission employee, you're just always in the go and got so much on your plate, it feels like you're drinking from a water hose all the time, or a fire hose, I should say. You got a high stress job, you got to have a lot of responsibility. If you're a provider for your family, you are a high achiever, guys. Whether you knew it or not, you are experiencing stress at the same level that a high achiever would. And that's who I coach. So stress response, looking at where does it impact our body, right? So I'm going to go through and I'm going to individually, piece by piece, break down each one of these little buttons over there and let you know a little bit about how stress impacts it. So it has many physiological functions, and that's cortisol. When we talk about managing stress, it's going to be one master hormone that regulates everything and anything in our body. And it plays a role in all these different functions on the right, but its name is cortisol. So it's a fight or flight hormone from our origin. When we were a hunting and gathering species, wake up in a cave and go do our business, come back to the cave, recover. Before we had civilization and all this other stuff, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But stress response is meant to be acute, right? It's meant to be short-lived. Whether it was in prehistoric times, you get an animal, near you creating danger, your body's going to raise this cortisol and it's going to become a little bit more increased performance. It's going to take away our blood from digestion and recovering into extremities, into more responding and reacting to the danger. So that way we can get away from this danger and not have to, be caught or eaten by an animal. And that's how we were back in the day. But now the same thing exists and it's a short burst, right? You're nervous for a speech. Your body's going to release a little cortisol. And guess what? That actually makes you better if it's acute. But the problem is it's no longer acute. It's now chronic. And that's when we start to get issues and we start to get problems. So it is good in moderation, but when it's not managed properly, excuse my dog. When it's not managed properly, it's going to become a problem. So what are we going to have? What kind of effects we would have as excess cortisol in the body that eventually becomes a problem to where we come down and now it's a major issue because we're producing cortisol. So we're going to have issues with decreased metabolism where your body's not going to burn as many calories, right? We'll see weight gain come on from that. Belly fat usually is a place that you'll see the body just doesn't want to lose weight anywhere. It may lose everywhere else, but belly fat is just stubborn. It doesn't want to come off no matter what you do because it's not what you eat. It's not what doing a crunches and sit-ups. It's that stress response that's packing it on in a specific area. As human beings, we all carry body fat differently. Like if you look at one person and another, you'll see disproportion occurring in one individual carrying it more in their stomach, one more in their breast, one more in their sides, one more in their legs, whatever it may be. Each hormone deposits body fat differently when it's out of proportion. And cortisol, that fight or flight hormone that's responsible for stress, puts it in the belly. So if you seem just can't lose it there, that may be the culprit. Depression, that's one that comes from bad stress response. And it usually comes from a long process and long-term stress response that's been chronically elevated. And now our body just can't keep up. It has to do with serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter. And I'll talk about that later on in more detail, but it's what makes us feel good. But the problem is it has an inverse relationship. When cortisol, that hormone that increases stress response, is high, it brings serotonin, the feeling of good, down. That fulfillment brings down strictly on a chemical standpoint. And then we don't feel as good throughout the day. We become depressed. We just don't enjoy activities like we used to. The next thing that we'll see is hypertension. With hypertension, cortisol has a partner hormone called aldosterone. And you guys don't have to remember all this. I just give you some science to understand this is not just Eastern medicine stuff. This is backed by Western medicine and research. But aldosterone basically regulates water in our body. And what it does when cortisol is up, it brings aldosterone up, and then it pushes too much water outside of our cell into the bloodstream, increasing the amount of water in our blood, which makes our capillaries and our vessels tighter, increasing our blood pressure and causing hypertension. Then we can have chronic fatigue. You will have things like tired and wired. People will say, I'm exhausted, but I just can't sleep, right? Because your body's just been in overproduction of stress for so long, it just can't keep up. And now it's underproducing. And what should be giving you energy is no longer doing it. The other thing it can impact is your thyroid, and that ultimately gives us energy. So when you're overly stressed for too long, your thyroid function slows down, giving us less energy to be active and feeling good throughout the day. Sleep deprivation, you're going to have issues with sleep. You're either going to have a hard time waking up or a hard time going back to sleep, or you lay down and your body's just right? You're counting sheep. You're thinking about what's to come. Your body's physically exhausted, but you just can't go to bed no matter what you do. It's because your body thinks it's 10 o'clock in the morning, not 10 o'clock at night, because of the level of cortisol response. I'll show that in a second. So the other issue that can come from sleep deprivation, or that can cause sleep deprivation, is actually on the lower side of cortisol, because it regulates blood sugar. So our blood sugar can crash out in the middle of the night, and to avoid going into a coma, our body will wake us up through an adrenaline pathway to get more cortisol, to get more blood sugar. But it's an adrenaline, so it wakes us up. You think you may have to go to the restroom, but your body's perfectly capable of holding urine for the entire night. If you're waking up, there's alternative reasons. You just don't know enough to blame something else. But I tell you, it's usually stress response that does it through blood sugar regulation. We'll have migraines. A lot of times when we're really stressed, our capillaries get tight because our body's very sympathetic, right? The sympathetic nervous go system, we're on high alert. We're trying to respond, get away from the stressor. We're not in recovery mode. We're not, relaxed. So it makes our capillaries tighter, which makes less oxygenated blood be delivered to the brain, makes less nutrients be delivered to the brain. And a lot of magnesium gets stripped out of that. And all those different things can cause migraines. Tunnel vision, right? And this is one that I love talking to business people. My favorite group of people to discuss stress management and internal health is actually people that need it for business. And when you're highly stressed, your body's in survival. So you really are in a box. Your body's just seeing things what's right in front of your face. You have poor ability to see down the road, poor ability to strategize. And that's because of stress. So if you're a creative, if you need your mind to be on and be able to see outside the box, it's not going to happen if you're overstressed. And that's why it's so important to take care of yourself, take care of your body. Acid reflux, right? When we have a ton of stress, our body drives blood and function away from digestion to extremities, as I mentioned, which causes our digestion not to function properly, causes acid reflux, causing poor digestion, absorption, and all sorts of issues, which in turn causes more stress on the body from the inside, which we'll talk about in a future webinar. And that causes more stress. So you can see that vicious snowball effect that you get into, where the digestion is causing more stress is causing poor digestion. And usually a stressed out person will have digestive problems. I would say 75 to 90% of people I work with that have been highly stressed usually have a digestive problem with it. They just may not know it because they're just like, oh, I'm just gassy. Well, guess what? If you're gassy, your body's raising its hand and going, hey, something's not right. Do something about it. But we got used to it because we think that's the way that it is, and we're doing nothing about it. Right? Hostility. When your body's not regulating blood sugar, when your body's always in that fight or flight, right? Imagine if I put a lion in front of your face at all times. Do you think you're going to be relaxed and friendly and engaging with people? No, you're going to be hostile. You're going to be on edge. You're going to be irritable. Hunger, right? Your body can have issues with hunger, whether it's too little hunger or too much of hunger. Sugar cravings, salt cravings, all those things are associated with stress. Arthritis, there's research backing that inflammation is increased when cortisol goes up, and specifically in the joints. So our arthritis can actually become worse when we're under stress than if we are managing our stress better. And then last, and really one of the most important, decreased immune system. Because it hurts your digestion, because it increases inflammation and all these things, your stress response is important for maintaining immunity. So if it's not being managed properly, those are the issues you're going to run into. So guys, just if you see anything come up, anything that I cover, and you have a question, feel free to just type it in and I'll see it pop up and I'll be able to answer it. So if anything comes up, feel free to reach out, type it in after any slide and I'll answer it at the end. All right. So moving on to our next slide. So talking about origins of stress, right? We usually think about stress as in our mind, and that's where it's usually coming from. But that's not the only place stress comes from. We have different types of stressors. We have physical stressors. We have mental, emotional stressors. We have environmental stressors, nutritional stressors, chemical stressors, and physiological stressors. So just give you an example of one per each, right? So physical stressors. Working too much physically, right? Training too much for marathons, working out in a gym, or just, hard working at work, not getting enough rest, too busy of a schedule. All those kind of things will become a problem. So the other thing is going to be mental, emotional, fear, worry, anxiety. If you're constantly worried about things, if you're constantly thinking about, something's on your mind, that's really going to stress your body out. Being preoccupied with thought will cause your body to actually create stress response. So mothers, I talk to a lot of mothers out there, and I tell them, guys, you just can't preoccupy your mind and can't be always worried about your kids, because then you don't become as good of a mother as you can be, and that hinders you. And that, obviously it's not as good if you don't take care of yourself. Environmental stressors. So we're going to have things like pollution, toxicity in our environment. Those are all going to be a problem. And we're absorbing those chemicals into our body. We're not designed for that, guys. What are you doing to correct this? Just think about it. What have you done lately to get rid of some of the toxicity in your system? And people are going to say, well, our body are naturally cleaning it out. Sure, our body are naturally cleaning out in old years before we had an overabundance of these chemicals. Now there's just too much. Our body's not designed to handle that much. One of the biggest ones out there is going to be sugar. And that's the nutritional one. And that one is a hidden one, right? They talk about sugar addiction, and sugar, it depends on who you talk to, and they'll tell you at least as addictive as a cocaine, right? The drug cocaine. It is as addictive, and some studies say it's as high as 3 times as addictive as cocaine. So here's the issue with that. Cocaine is illegal. You can't go in the corner store and buy some because it's frowned upon and you're probably going to get arrested, unless you're in Portugal. But sugar, you can get anywhere. And everybody pushes it nowadays. Most restaurants add sugar to things just to make it taste better, even if it doesn't need it, the recipe doesn't call for it. So it's everywhere, and it's screwing up our stress response, because every time you get sugar into your system, your body spikes and your body's trying to use stress response to get rid of that excess. So make sure that you're controlling your nutrition to control your stress. We talked about chemicals in the environment, but then chemicals in your makeup, chemicals in your cleaning products and things like that. That's all absorbed. I've seen so many women having issues with estrogen because of all the stuff they absorb through their makeup. That's why I encourage to go to a natural makeup. And then physiological stress is going to be lack of sleep, right? One of those problems that we'll get if we're not giving enough sleep. And this is where I love talking to your entrepreneurs and people are like, I'm good on 4 hours. Define good. What does good mean? When was the last time you actually felt optimized to be able to contrast what good feels like? When was the last time you had a great night of sleep and actually got great recovery and were able to see what that feels like? So you may have been so far away from that, they have no clue what good feels like. Guys, there's research that says it. So I don't care what anybody tells you. 7 to 8 hours of sleep is what you need. Not 4, not 5. I don't care how you feel. Because if you feel fine now, it doesn't mean that you're going to be fine 10 years from now. And we'll talk about disease model here in a sec. So moving on, right? So the problem that you're feeling right now, if somebody's really having some symptoms from stress response and it's causing all sorts of issues for them, that didn't happen yesterday. That didn't even happen last year. Chances are this is something 5 to 15 years down the road that started to happen, and it created this issue to now you have a full-blown diagnosis or a disease that's coming from it. So let's take a look at this model, right? It starts out with optimal health. We start out with lean body composition. Our body has no symptoms. We're walking around with a normal feel. Everything's great. Then we start to have imbalanced physiology because we didn't take care of our body. We didn't do the right things. And now we start to have issues. And that causes us to have increased fat deposits, decreased muscle tones, loss of energy, lots of different things start to happen. Some symptoms we talked about in the previous slide start to occur. So what we want to make sure happens is we start to take care of this before it becomes out of range lab markers, because then it becomes a full-on disease and this cycle ends in that really bad situation where you have multiple symptoms, you have excess fat, decreased strength, over dysfunction, one or multiple diagnoses. You're taking so many medications that you don't even know what you're taking them for because one is to overcome a side effect of another, right? So take care of this at the root cause before it becomes a true problem. All right, moving on. Looks like we have Linda was raising her hand. Linda, just type your question into the question box if you have something to ask. All right, so moving on. We have a disease model that I want to discuss with you guys. So what we're talking about right now is there's three kind of pillars of health, three pillars of the way we manage our health. And the first one is going to be the conventional Western medicine one that is basically when you get sick and your doctor's going to treat you with medication, treat you with pills, treat you with whatever it is they need to do, shots, whatever it may be. Imagine a tree, and that tree is what we're going to use as an analogy to describe all these different medical systems. So the Western medicine, the traditional medicine that we are used to is there to take care of a symptom. And each leaf on that tree is like a different symptom. And then your doctor is going to prescribe, which is needed, guys. I'm not here to argue Western medicine. It's needed when you're diseased. But the problem is they're just there to make you feel better, to help you get by through the day because they're just knocking out one symptom at a time on that tree. So then you have a little bit of broader scope and you have naturopathic medicine. So something that's newer on the scene. It's been around for a long time, but more accepted now with doctors. And we have actually education, not shamans and, voodoo magic and stuff like that people like to call it. But now we have people that are educated in naturopathic medicine. So they're going to look at the entire system. So say you have low testosterone, for example, your body may need it. So your doctor may just give it to you and address that symptom. And somebody that specializes in naturopathic medicine may look at the entire endocrine system and see, why do you have low testosterone? How is the ratio of one hormone to the other? And is it truly the problem in the individual hormone, or it's the other hormones in relation with it that are not being produced properly or used properly that's causing the issue within this one? So moving on, we have what I deal with. Everything, the naturopathic medicine, it's more the tree trunk, right? But everything is above the surface. Now this problem has become a real problem. What I deal with, and a lot of coaches, health coaches out there deal with, is the root causes before they've surfaced. We work with things like foods and nutrients, work on working through traumas, working on emotional stresses, discussing reducing pesticides, GMO foods, all those different things. But when you fix the root cause, when you address the thing at the bottom, your body's going to be able to get everything above it better, right? So it's a little bit of a different approach. Instead of starting at the top and just trickling our way and addressing every little thing, we start at the bottom and watch everything get better because we're addressing the root cause of the problem. So that's kind of what we're looking at with different models of health. Moving on, talking about basically the design of our body. What is cortisol designed to be, and what is it like now, and where is it headed? What we were before, right? So this is a little graph that we talk about. Cortisol follows a diurnal rhythm, means that it starts high and as a day progresses, supposed to come down to nothing. So this is where we get into prehistoric times, like I told you, cave people. That's what we were. So we're looking at Waking up in the cave, we want that high amount of energy in the morning. Wake up, guess what? You're supposed to wake up and feel good energy. Now, I'm not talking about you have to like just jump right out of bed, but you should be alert, ready to go, not tired, not hitting the snooze button 5 to 10 times, not needing 2 cups of coffee. If that's happening, your body's just telling you, hey, something's not right and you got to do something about it. And we'll cover a lot of the corrective actions in the future webinars next week and the week after that. But start out nice and high. As the day progresses, you see gradually coming down to a minimal point around 10 p.m. at night. And at that point, cortisol comes down. Your body goes, you know what? I don't need to be in this fight or flight alert situation. Now I need to become more relaxed and calm down. So what that causes, it causes our body to recover and calm back down. It switches from cortisol production to melatonin production, which is what's going to help us to fall asleep and stay asleep. And if you come in saying you're elevated, right? Your body's higher than you should be. You're up here. Your body doesn't think it's 10 p.m. If you look at the graph, it'll be like a 10 a.m. slot. So you lay down, physically, you're exhausted. Your body's went through a long day of activity. You may not have slept good the night before, and you're ready for bed. And you lay down, and the brain just won't shut up. And we make so many excuses, and we talk about, oh, I'm a night owl. I've been this way all my life. Cool, you've been off from optimal all your life. It doesn't mean that that's normal. Something that we say a lot of times and we misconstrued in our societies, common equals normal. No, it does not. Just because everybody's jumping off a bridge doesn't mean it's normal. So just because everybody's having sleep issues these days in modern world does not mean it's normal. There is something we can do about it, and that's what I'm trying to teach you guys. So if you're laying down and it takes you longer than 5 minutes to fall asleep, guys, that's a red flag. Your body's telling you, hey, something's up. If you're not able to stay asleep throughout the night, that's already a symptom. Even if it's just waking up to go to the restroom, technically you shouldn't even have to do that. But especially if you woke up and have a hard time going back to sleep, or you're just waking up all the time or a light sleeper, those are massive red flags. Your body's trying to tell you, you have to do something for me. You have to help me out and make me feel better. So you have to understand these things, and you have to understand what's happening before you can even correct it. You have to understand there's a problem before you realize you need to find a solution. So it's not all bad, right? We talk about cortisol protects our cells from damage. It regulates our blood sugar. It regulates blood pressure. It's anti-inflammatory, strengthens our heart, all these positive things. But when it's too high or too low or fluctuating crazily up and down, it causes problems. If you're a business person, and most people that have a hard time going to sleep at night usually have a drop in cortisol around between 12 and 2 p.m. Get a little tired, get the mid-afternoon crash, and guess what? Post-lunch meetings start to get really challenging. Post-lunch meetings start to get difficult to make decisions. Post-lunch meetings start to become a problem. And guess why that's happening? Because you're not sleeping well at home, and you got to do something about it. And some of the things you got to do may require additional time, meditation, other things we'll discuss. But the amount of time you're going to cut back for yourself by not making mistakes, by being more optimized, more energized in your meetings, is going to be paid back tenfold. So make sure that you're following proper guidelines. So what I really want to get into is sleep hygiene. This is my gift to you today. That's what I want to leave you with, and in detail discuss what are the kind of things, what is this routine that you need to do to optimize your sleep. Even if it's not really bad right now, doing some of these things can help. It doesn't mean you have to do all of them. You can just try some of them. But if you're at a point where you're just having massive sleep problems and this has become a real issue for you, this is what you need to do and follow it to a T. Don't deviate. Do it exactly how it is for 30 days, and then you'll be sold on why this is important. Just about anything I talk to with clients, I say, hey, do this for 30 days consecutively, because if you don't, you won't truly feel a contrast. You won't truly feel what that good optimal feeling is. And then you'll be sold on doing all these extra things. And then you just get into a habit and it becomes no problem, out of sight, out of mind, really, really easy. So what we're looking at first, in the morning, right when you wake up, increase your heart rate. Even if you can't complete a long workout, I'm not talking about 30 minutes. If you can just get a quick, high intensity, 15 minutes of increased heart rate, you're telling your body, hey, we're woken up. It's time to get up. It's time to do things. It's time to get the day started. We need to kickstart our cortisol response. And guess what? When you do that high intensity activity, your body's going to raise cortisol. It's going to force it to come up, that stress response. So it's going to give you energy. But because that keeps happening over and over and over every day, your body will naturally start to produce it and start to make it be a normal response that doesn't have to be induced by exercise. It happens on its own. Then get some sun. Exposure to sunlight can help set up optimal circadian rhythm, because if you're not getting sun early in the day, your body may think it's still nighttime. And similarly, we'll talk about white light at night, but you got to get that exposure. I happen to live in Arizona. I'm blessed. It's really fun and nice, so I'm able to get outside and enjoy the warm weather year round. I like to do my workouts. Don't make fun of me. My neighbors don't see me. I have this fence. I do my workouts in my shorts. Nothing but my shorts, no t-shirt, nothing. Why? Because I'm getting the sunlight. I'm getting vitamin D, but I'm also getting exposed to the sunlight for my cortisol. So it's a really healthy thing that I do maybe 3 to 4 times a week. I don't have stress problems, but I just do that for other ways to optimize my body. Limit stimulants. This one is so hard for so many of you guys. Coffee's not bad for you. Here, I'm going to tell you this right now. Coffee is not bad for you. But here's the catch. Coffee's bad for people that need it. Man, that's about everybody that drinks coffee, right? So why is that? Coffee is actually a cherry. It comes from a cherry. So it's full of antioxidants. It's really good for our body when it comes down to just cellular health. But the problem is most of us abuse it and do way too much of it. We do it way too late in the day. And every time you have caffeine, it's going to spike that cortisol. So imagine this, right? Your body's been tired. Your body's fatigued because you've been stressed out for so long. And now you're underproducing this cortisol, this fight or flight hormone. And now you're tired from it. So then what do? You get more coffee to force your body to produce more. But how I make this analogy is like a marathon runner. Have you ever seen somebody finishing a marathon, especially if it's like an ultra distance one, like a 50 miler, they're just exhausted. Their legs are wobbly. They can't remember their name and stuff like that. So every time you give coffee, it's like running up to that marathon runner and hitting them in the kidneys real hard, right? Pop. Yes, they're going to go a little harder, but eventually they're just going to break down and completely fail. And that's what you're doing when your body's stressed out and you're just feeding it caffeine over and over and over. You're punching yourself in the kidneys and adrenal glands and just hurting yourself more and more. Yes, you're getting a short-term benefit, but you're looking at a long-term crash. Guys, avoid these crashes. This is no joke. I had a client that was getting ready. This was about 8 years ago. I was teaching boot camps back then, and she was getting ready for a wedding. And what she was doing is she was coming to my boot camp class, which I'm not a nice instructor. I'm a drill instructor, basically, ex-Marine Corps, right? So I would kill him for an hour, and then she would go do an hour of intense cardio afterwards. And I would come and talk to her, Don, you can't do this to your body. You're just having too much stress. This is too much activity. It's a stressor on your body. She wasn't listening. She's like, Anton, I got 2 months to my wedding. I want to look good, right? We want to look good for our wedding. I get it. I understand it. So I think 2 weeks goes by, and all of a sudden I don't see her. I haven't seen her for like a week after that. So I run into her. She comes to the club and she just looks tired. I mean, she just exhausted. She looks gray in the face, lifeless. And she's like, Anton, I don't know what's going on with me. All of a sudden, I just can't get up. I can't get any energy. I have no desire to work out. And like, Don, you didn't listen. I'm sorry, but now you got to go to a doctor and do this cortisol test. And they're going to tell you most likely you're in adrenal failure. And I thought she was in adrenal exhaustion, hopefully, but her adrenals failed. It means that your body stopped producing cortisol. Your body's no longer making it. So that becomes a problem. And of course, so I talked to her. I'm like, what's the issue? She's like, it's going to be a long journey to recover. I'm going to try to get through the wedding and then really start it. Took a year and a half. I saw her in the pool and I'm walking by and recognized her. I'm like, oh, hey, Don, great to see you. I'm excited. I may get a client back, right? Everything's good. She's like, hey, Anton's good to see you. And she just still doesn't look happy. I'm like, what's going on? I'm glad you're exercising. She's like, no, I'm able to be in the pool, but I'm not even able to swim. Water helps with stress. So her doctor's putting her in a pool, but after a year and a half of this recovery, she still hasn't been cleared to work out. So guys, I'm not trying to scare you, but I am a little bit trying to scare you. This is no joke. When your adrenals fail, it becomes a serious problem. There's so many issues that come out of it. It's not worth it. So limit your stimulants because we don't want to punch that tired guy in the kidneys to try to get him to go harder for a little bit longer for a short-term gain and causes problems down the road. If you do have stimulants, do not have them past noon. No matter what, stop your coffee past noon. In moderation, I can argue that it's okay, but if you keep doing it and you keep doing it, it's going to be a problem. And if you just stay off caffeine for 30 days, you'll see an energy improvement in itself, and just increase your water and it'll help. Avoid nightcaps, right? So everybody talks about alcohol, and most people think alcohol is bad just because of the sugars. But ultimately, alcohol can severely interfere with REM sleep. It's that deep sleep that basically causes us to truly get recovery for our brain, not just our body, for our brain. And when you have alcohol, you may feel like you knocked out fast and it helps you, but you're not getting good quality. It's restless sleep. So make sure that you're not doing nightcaps, because a lot of times we do nightcaps to help us de-stress. If that's what you're doing, just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. There's a real issue that's going on, and you're trying to cover it up with an easy fix, and it's not going to work that way. So alcohol is also a poison. What does it do? It kills good gut bacteria in our stomach. I'll discuss this in much greater detail in future webinars, but it kills gut bacteria in our stomach, causing us to have poor digestion. And we talked about it. Poor digestion causes more stress. We get into this vicious snowball effect and causing more problems. Next tip is munch on veggies. Having some complex carbs, especially my favorite one is a sweet potato, those red potatoes. Eating 1/2 of starchy vegetables at dinner may help with serotonin, and melatonin, which is that relaxation and good feeling production. And at night, right? So I usually recommend for my clients, not even at dinner, honestly, right before bed, I'll have them eat 1/2 cup of, either mashed potatoes, or I'll have them fry it, whatever way you want to do it. Have a little butter on it, no big deal, something like that, and it'll help you with sleep. The next one, I want to show you this on my iPhone, and there's a lot of apps that do this. So if you can see my screen, I don't know how well you can see it, but if I triple click it, see how the screen turned red? This is what I do with my technology at night. I reduce blue light and white light exposure, because when your body sees that bright light, it thinks it's the same thing as sunlight. So we talked about getting sunlight early in the day to signal it's time to get going. Similar reasons, we don't want bright lights later at night, telling our body that it's still daytime and it's time to be functioning and be awake. So start to turn it down. I usually dim the bright lights, all fluorescents, leave the minimal lights. And then when I lay down in bed, I may use my phone for a little bit, and then I try to shut it off and go into meditation. We'll talk about that in the future. But I give myself at least 30 minutes with really no technology exposure before I go to bed. Between journaling, meditation, that's usually what it's filled with. Set an alarm, right? Why am I talking about setting an alarm now that we're going to bed? Because if you truly want to fix your stress response, you must be able to regulate when you go to sleep and when you wake up. So set an alarm for when you're waking up, but also set an alarm for when you're going to bed. Same weekends, weekdays, keep it the same for 30 days until you get better. Then you can deviate from that a little bit. But when you're trying to truly correct it, do not deviate, make it a pattern. Reminder to turn off the light, reminder to get to bed, reminder to do all these different things that you may need. Turn down the lights, already discussed that. Turning it down temperature wise. So I sleep as cold as I can. In the summer months, it's really tough. Our energy bill will get real high, but I'd still get it down to 69, and I suffer through the cost. In the winter months, I'll usually get it down to 66, because when we have a little bit of a cooler environment, we're able to have better sleep. So aim less than 68 degrees if you can, and it'll help you sleep better. And then ultimately, last but not least, is black it out. So blacking it out is going to be where even the smallest standby lights on your TVs, there's research that says exposure to those lights at night reduces your melatonin production, reduces your ability to de-stress and stay asleep. So that becomes a problem. We're not able to do it. So those are the things that you want to do for a good sleep hygiene. Guys, there's lots of different supplements, lots of different things you can take. I'll cover that in the future. But just know, this is just what I want you to understand. Implement some, implement all, depending on where you're at with issues. And basically, you'll be getting better. So this is basically it for the first introductory part of this webinar. I'll send an email with a recap and a recording to everybody, but we'll have additional webinars that are going to be free to build on this information. I've tried this a couple different ways. I've tried to give you a ton of information in the past, and I've tried to give little, and I've kind of landed on a sweet spot of about, 40 minutes or so is what we went right now. If you have additional questions, we'll dive into those, but I don't want to overwhelm you, because I need you to start to implement this. All I want you to work on is your sleep hygiene for this week. I want you to start and piece by piece, knock it out. So then you start seeing the benefits of what I'm teaching you. And then when I start giving you more complex things to add in, you're going to be able to implement it much easier because you're going to be bought in from the experiences you've had so far. So I'm going to see there is a question posted over here, and I will dive into answering. If anybody else comes up with any other questions, just type them out. So can exercising in the early evening be counteractive to going to sleep easily? Absolutely. This is something that I do. So one of the things that I do when I get a really stressed out person, exercise is part of it, but the type of exercise you need to do, duration, intensity, and timing of it becomes important once we understand it, what area of stress problems you are in. So if your body's high and already coming into the evening high and you're having a hard time falling asleep, what is that exercise doing? I told you, when you're exercising in the morning, your body's going to kick up that cortisol. Well, the same thing is going to happen at night. When you're exercising at night and you're already high, you're shooting it up even more, taking yourself a really long time to wind down. So you need to force yourself to exercise in the morning, even if it's tough, you don't have energy, you're not motivated, do it for 30 days, you'll get used to it because your circadian sleep pattern will shift. And I know this, guys, because I've done this multiple times in my life, myself and with other clients. I worked an evening shift with my old job where I was finishing my day around 9:30, 10 p.m. By the time I get home, be 11, wind down, 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to bed getting tired. Then my youngest was born and I had to shift to a morning shift where I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning to be at work by 5:30. So you can imagine if I'm used to going to bed at 1 and I have to wake up at 4:30, I wasn't a very happy camper. So I did a cortisol assessment. It's a saliva test. If you guys needed this, reach out to me. I'll get you a link to my company that does these great assessments. But I did the assessment. I figured out what my levels are. And then I knew the specific exercise I needed to implement, the specific supplements I needed to implement. And I shifted my pattern to where I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning, ready to go alert. And I was able to go to bed at 9 o'clock, no problem. So through proper testing, through proper supplementation and modifying your stress or response in your exercise, you can actually become a morning person if you weren't a morning person. Or you can shift into an evening person if you have necessity for it because of a night job. Not optimal, but if you have to, you got to do what you got to do to make it happen. So that's it. If I don't have any other questions, guys, that's really all I have for you. I'm going to see if we have anybody that's raising their hand, and looks like we don't have anything. If you do have anything that comes up, guys, shoot me an email and I can answer any questions in the future webinars. And if you have anything specific you want to learn more about, respond to my email and say, hey, in a future webinar, can you just address this, and I'll implement that and we'll go from there. So guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking these, 43 minutes or so. I'm a little 2 minutes short my plan for being on this webinar. I'll see you next week. Stand by for the exact time, and we will send you an invite for the future ones. All right, guys, have a good one. Bye.